This is a story about Follow the Drinking Gourd, a song used to guide slaves along on the Underground Railroad. I'm going to tell the story, and Mareva Lindo is going to sing the song. Maddie usually didn't pay much attention to the tradesmen who came and went on Mr. Harris's farm. They arrived to shoe the horses or sweep the chimney or replace a wagon wheel, and then they were gone, often the same day. None of that was her business, and she had her own work to do in the kitchen and the laundry. But there was no ignoring the carpenter who came in to oversee the building of a horse stable. The man only had one leg. In place of his right foot, he walked on a wooden peg that pressed a round hole into the dirt wherever he stepped. After the peg-legged carpenter passed by the main house, Maddie and another girl ran outside to look at his footprints. One set was a normal left boot print, the other a disc. His name is Joe, reported Maddie's husband Henry, who had been enlisted to work on the stable. They call him Peg-Leg Joe. He used to be a sailor. He used to call it Mobile, which is how he got to know Alabama. How did he lose his leg, Maddie asked. He didn't say. Cassius said he heard it. He lost it fighting with pirates on the Spanish Main, but you know how Cassius makes up stories. He said every time you hear the wind through that big cypress tree, it's Isaac's ghost moaning. Isaac was a field hand who had died from a whipping administered against that cypress tree after he'd been caught trying to escape. That had been 6 years ago. No one had left Mr. Harris's farm since. That satisfied Maddie's curiosity about the peg-legged man, but apparently he continued thinking about her and Henry. A week later, after dark, there was a knock on the door of the cabin they shared. Henry had built it with his own hands after they jumped the broom so they didn't have to share quarters with the other hands. Henry rolled off their straw mattress and peered through a chink in the door. "Who's that?" he asked. "It's Joe," said the voice on the other side of the door. Henry opened the door. Peg-Leg Joe took off his hat and strode into the cabin, printing his distinctive tracks on its dirt floor. "Is there something wrong with the stable?" Henry asked. A late-night visit from a white man was always a cause for anxiety. "No, there's nothing wrong with the stable," said Joe. "Then why do you have to see me in the middle of the night?" "I had supper with the overseer tonight," Joe said. "He told me I might be missing a pair of hands soon. He said Mr. Harris is planning to sell you to raise money to send his son to college up north." Henry and Maddie looked at each other. 6 months they had been married after growing up together on this farm. They had courted since they were old enough to be interested in each other that way, and neither had ever been interested in anyone else. But if Henry was sold to a distant plantation, they might never see each other again. Worse, Maddie had just discovered she was pregnant. Maddie could understand why Mr. Harris had singled out Henry. He was only 19 or so, the tallest, strongest hand on the farm, with years of hard work left in his body before it wore out. He might fetch $1,000 on the auction block. "What's any of that to you?" Henry asked, speaking Maddie's mind as well. Why did a man who earned his wages from Mr. Harris care what happened to his boss's slaves? "I'm not from Alabama," Peg-Leg Joe said. "I'm from a place called Wynot, Indiana. And don't ask me why it's called Wynot. I'll just answer with the name of the town. The first time I ever saw slaves, they were unloading cargo on the docks at Mobile. And then I walked into town. This is when I still had both legs. And I saw a man chained up like a criminal, being auctioned off like a breeding bull. Well, I think any man's got the same right to earn his living as I do. Since I lost my leg and quit sailing, I took up carpentry, and I've gone from one plantation to another, plying my trade and helping folks like you escape. I've helped two so far, and neither of them were captured. It's still dangerous, though, so you think about it. If you're interested, Henry, I'll tell you everything you need to know to make it north." Maddie and Henry decided right then that they would rather be whipped to death like Isaac than live the rest of their lives apart from each other, as parents of a fatherless boy or girl. "All right then, I'm going to teach you the song I taught to the others," Joe said, and explains the route you'll need to take and makes it easy to remember.
Follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. Well, the old man is waiting just to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gourd. When the sun comes back and the first quail calls, follow the drinking gourd. The old man is waiting just to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. Oh, follow the drinking gourd. Well, the old man is waiting just to carry you to freedom. Follow the There the old man is waiting just to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gourd. Oh, follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. Well, the old man is waiting just to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gourd.
When he was finished, Joe explained the song's meaning. When the sun comes back was a reference to spring, the best time to leave Alabama to ensure you made it to the Ohio River before the winters freeze. The riverbank is a mighty good road was the Tombigbee, which could be followed north into Mississippi. Along the way, Joe has carved his distinctive footprints into dead trees as guideposts to mark the route. The headwaters of the Tombigbee were between two hills at the twin-peaked Woodall Mountain. The river on the other side was the Tennessee, which flows north into the Ohio. At that confluence, where the Little River meets the Great Big River, a boat would be waiting to carry them across the Ohio River into Illinois, the southernmost free state. All throughout their journey as they traveled at night to avoid detection, they should follow the Drinking Gourd, the constellation known as the Big Dipper, whose handle pointed toward the North Star, a beacon shining over the land of freedom. Henry and Joe did not speak again except when Joe gave an order on the work site. After the job was complete and Joe rode away, Henry and Maddie waited more than a week to make their escape, until the next full moon, which would illuminate their nighttime travels, until they could locate the Tombigbee River. They left just in the nick of time. Their absence was discovered when Mr. Harris sent his overseer to their cabin with orders to chain Henry to a wagon and deliver him to the slave market in Mobile. Furious, the master of the plantation printed up posters offering a $100 reward for the return of his valuable property and had them nailed up in public squares all over the county. Maddie and Henry had left Mr. Harris's farm with no food and only the clothes they were wearing. They feared that carrying bundles would identify them as fugitives rather than slaves on a master's errand. They followed creeks downstream to the river, listening every night for the cock's crow as a signal to conceal themselves in caves or the hollows of trees. Even traveling at night was dangerous because slave patrols rode in the darkness. The penalty for escaping was 39 lashes. Before leaving, the couple had rubbed red onions and spruce pine on their shoes to leave a scent that would confuse the bloodhounds. Maddie and Henry passed some landmarks in Pegleg Joe's song. Climbing the pass between the peaks of Woodall Mountain, they found the Tennessee River and began following its course downstream. Clearly, though, it was going to take more than a week to reach the Ohio and the boat that would carry them to freedom. Pegleg Joe had directed them to escape in the spring so they would arrive before the river froze. That was months. They needed a faster method of travel. Passing a farm one night, Henry spotted a horse tied loosely to a post. "That would speed us along," he remarked to Maddie. "You know what they do to horse thieves," she said. "I know what they do to runaway slaves, too. I'd rather be hung for stealing that horse than whipped and sold off to chop cotton the rest of my life. So young Master Harris can go to college up north. You wait here." Henry climbed through the fence and approached the horse, a bony, unshorn gelding. The horse looked too old and scrawny to pull a plow. Henry thought he might be doing the farmer a favor by sparing them the trouble of shooting and burying it. His fingers easily untangled the knotted rope, and he led the horse through an unlocked gate. "Jump on," he ordered Maddie, hoisting her onto the horse's rump. Henry sat on its back, took hold of the bridle, and slapped its neck. The horse cantered forward along a trail that paralleled the Tennessee. 3 nights Maddie and Henry rode that horse, watering it in the river and allowing it to graze in meadows. More than once during that ride, they saw a dead tree on which was carved Pegleg Joe's footprint, telling them they were on the right course. On the 4th night, the horse refused to move. Maddie tore a switch off a tree and beat the horse's withers, but it only took a few steps before collapsing to its knees, throwing its passengers into the dirt. "We wore it out," Henry said. "We're just going to have to leave here and move on." The horse had carried them far. The Tennessee had widened and strengthened, leading Henry and Maddie to believe they were nearing its mouth, where the boat would be waiting. Growing season had advanced, so they could filch green corn and tomatoes from gardens. Bitter as those vegetables were, they were still nourishing. Finally, Maddie and Henry climbed to the top of a hill and saw the Ohio River beneath them. It was the largest body of water either had ever laid eyes on. A moonglade glittered on the surface as though illuminating the path to freedom. But of course they couldn't walk it, and neither knew how to swim. They had to find the boat Pegleg Joe had told them about. But this being the meeting place of 2 great rivers, it was along the site of the biggest town either had ever laid eyes on, and they were still in slave territory. "We're just going to have to go down there late at night, hope nobody sees us, and hope there's a boat there," Maddie said. Maddie and Henry made their way down to the riverfront. Fortunately, a levee shielded them from the view of the townspeople, and no one stirred inside the steamboats tied up along its length. At the point where the little river met the great big river, they saw a rowboat bobbing near the rocky bank. As they drew closer, they could see a man holding the oars. As they drew closer still, they could see it was Pegleg Joe.